Welcome to Cruise News, your daily update on everything happening at sea. Visit cruisenews.io to see today's stories and sign up for email alerts.
We are definitely tracking a really massive structural shift across the industry today.
Yeah, we really are. If you're looking at booking a sailing for, 2026 or 2027, the options on the table are fundamentally changing as we speak.
Right, entirely.
The overarching theme we're seeing right now is just, well, it's a theme of shifting plans. We're watching cruise lines execute these massive itinerary redeployments, basically completely abandoning certain regions. And we're also tracking this quiet but honestly aggressive surge in port costs. And that's altering the basic math of where these floating resorts can even afford to dock.
Oh, completely. And it ties directly into the strategic gambles that these lines are taking with their older hardware, specifically what it actually means for you if you book a sailing right after a ship comes out of a major dry dock.
Right, because none of these developments are happening in a vacuum, are they?
No, not at all. They're all driven by the exact same core pressure. I mean, cruise lines are just trying to navigate a highly volatile global landscape while protecting their profit margins.
Yeah, that's a massive balancing act.
Exactly. It's balancing, mitigating external risks, managing these skyrocketing operational costs, and, like you said, finding new ways to extract value from their existing fleets.
Well, let's start with that geography of risk, because we just saw a pretty major domino fall. Costa Cruises has completely scrapped its plans for the Middle East for the winter 2026-27 season.
Yeah, they are pulling out entirely.
She's totally gone.
Carnival Corporation, which owns Costa, obviously, they are looking at the geopolitical outlook for the Arabian Gulf and deciding they certainly do not want the exposure.
Right.
So Costa Smeralda was supposed to be in the Gulf now. She is being yanked.
Wow.
Yeah, she's being sent to run a brand new 7-night itinerary that links the Canary Islands and Madeira instead.
And that causes this huge ripple effect across the rest of the fleet, right? Because Smeralda is moving to the Canaries, the Costa Pacifica, which was originally supposed to take that Canaries route.
She gets bumped.
Right, she gets bumped. So now Pacifica is heading to the Western Mediterranean following her planned dry dock. She'll be picking up itineraries that reach down into Southern Europe and North Africa. And bookings for these new routes are supposed to open by, I think, late March.
Late March, yeah. And the logistics of this, it's just staggering. When a cruise line redeploys vessels of this size, they are undoing literally years of advanced planning.
Decades of man-hours, probably.
Oh, absolutely. They have to go out and secure new port berths in the Mediterranean, negotiate new terminal space, tear up all their old provisioning contracts for food and fuel in the Middle East.
Which is huge.
Right, and then entirely rewrite their marketing strategies on top of it.
So I have to ask about the passengers who are already booked on those Middle East sailings or, the repositioning cruises to get there. Costa is offering them an immediate transfer to another cruise, plus $200 in onboard credit per cabin.
Which breaks down to about $100 per person.
Right, $100 per person. And my initial reaction is that $100 per person feels, I don't know, a bit light. Like, if you had your heart set on seeing the Emirates and now you're being offered a week in Spain.
I mean, I hear you. It feels like a letdown. But it actually is the industry standard for a cancellation this far out.
Really?
Yeah. Because these sailings are late 2026 and early 2027, Costa's calculation is that they are giving passengers plenty of time to adjust their vacation plans.
Oh, I see. So the onboard credit is just kind of a bonus.
It's essentially a gesture of goodwill, right? They want to retain the booking within the Carnival Corporation family rather than losing that customer to a competitor.
And speaking of competitors, this is where the story gets incredibly layered. Because Carnival Corporation cited an uncertain regional outlook. And they didn't just pull Costa, they also canceled Ada Cruises' season in the region.
Right, pulling the Ada Prima.
Exactly. They stated they want to ensure every sailing remains relaxing, enjoyable, and worry-free. And you hear that and you naturally assume, well, the Arabian Gulf is about to be a ghost town for cruise ships.
Yeah, but the reality is the exact opposite.
It's wild.
It really is. While Carnival Corporation is fleeing the region, several other major players are basically doubling down.
The contrast is just fascinating. Let's look at who is actually staying. MSC Cruises is sending the MSC World Europa. And I just want to pause on that ship for a second because the scale is hard to even comprehend.
It's massive.
It is over 215,000 gross tons and carries nearly 7,000 guests.
And just to clarify for the listener, because gross tons is a term that gets thrown around a lot in this industry, it doesn't actually measure weight.
Right.
It's a measurement of interior volume. So 1 gross ton equals exactly 100 cubic feet of enclosed space.
Okay, wow.
So when we say 215,000 gross tons, we are talking about a vessel with the interior volume of a massive skyscraper, basically operating as a floating city.
Thank you for that, because it really highlights the sheer physical and honestly financial risk of sending a piece of hardware that massive into a region. And MSC isn't alone there.
No, not at all. Celestial is operating their Desert Days and iconic Arabia itineraries. TUI is sending a brand new ship, the Mein Schiff. Arroyo is planning a 3-month deployment. And Explorer Journeys is debuting the Explorer 2 in the region.
I mean, Explorer did build in a little breathing room, right? They extended their cancellation window by 45 days.
They did, yeah. But structurally, they are holding the course.
It just feels like a massive high-stakes game of risk, you know?
Oh, that's a perfect way to put it.
But instead of little plastic armies, you're playing with, like, billion-dollar floating resorts. And you have to commit your pieces to the board years before the game actually starts. So if MSC is comfortable sending 7,000 passengers into the Arabian Gulf, why is Carnival Corporation viewing the exact same body of water as too risky?
Well, it really comes down to corporate risk tolerance. MSC might have a different calculation regarding their European source markets, or perhaps they just have a higher threshold for regional uncertainty.
Interesting.
Carnival Corporation is looking at the landscape and deciding that the financial penalty of having to scramble and redeploy a ship, say 6 months from now.
Which would be a nightmare.
Exactly. They think that's infinitely worse than the pain of ripping the Band-Aid off today. They want the absolute certainty of the Canary Islands and the Mediterranean, where those logistical variables are heavily, heavily controlled.
That makes me wonder about the passenger's role in all this. If you are a loyal Costa cruiser, your geographic options are suddenly being dictated not by where the ocean can take you, but by a corporate boardroom's geopolitical risk assessment.
Which is a reality cruisers just have to accept right now. But there is another, much quieter force dictating where these ships can sail.
Right.
It doesn't make international headlines the way geopolitical tension does, but it is fundamentally altering the cruise map.
You're talking about the rising cost of actually pulling into port?
Exactly.
We are seeing this play out right now in Portland, Maine. The Portland City Council just approved Tariff 11, which goes into effect January 1st, 2027, and they are hiking their fees significantly.
They really are.
The per-passenger tariff is climbing from $18 to $24 by 2030, and the annual infrastructure fee is jumping from $3 to $7.
And keep in mind, Portland sees about 100 cruise visits a year. And we are talking about massive vessels.
Yeah, the mega ships.
Right, ships like the MSC Meraviglia, the Norwegian Breakaway, the Majestic Princess. These ships bring thousands of people to Casco Bay all at once.
And, you know, my first thought when I see a $10 overall fee increase per passenger is to kind of shrug.
Sure.
Like, if a family is paying $3,000 for a cruise vacation, an extra $10 feels like a rounding error. Why would a multi-billion-dollar cruise line actually care about a marginal fee hike in Maine?
Well, because you cannot look at that $10 in a vacuum. The cruise business operates on incredibly tight margins per passenger.
Right, economies of scale.
Exactly. So a $10 increase on a ship carrying 4,000 passengers means the line is suddenly paying $40,000 more just to tie off the ropes for 8 hours.
Wow.
And that is just one port.
It compounds. If Portland raises fees, and then Bar Harbor raises fees, and then Halifax raises fees, suddenly the overhead for a standard, 7-day New England itinerary has completely spiked.
And the structural reality of that route changes entirely. Initially, yeah, cruise lines will quietly pass those port charges down to you, the passenger, folding them into the taxes and fees at checkout.
Which we all love.
Right. But eventually, if the baseline cost of an itinerary becomes too expensive, consumers will push back.
Right.
If the math stops making sense, the cruise line will simply move the ship to a region with cheaper operational costs.
But Portland is trying to, soften the blow for certain ships. Tariff 11 includes this fascinating environmental lever.
Yes, the fuel discount.
Right. They're offering a $2 per passenger discount for ships that use low sulfur fuel, specifically marine gas oil, while they are docked or anchored in Portland Harbor.
And that discount exists because of a pretty massive infrastructure gap. Portland doesn't offer shore power.
Meaning the ship can't just plug a giant extension cord into the local electrical grid when it docks.
Exactly, they cannot plug in. And a modern cruise ship requires immense power, even when it is just sitting still.
Right, for the hotel operations.
Yeah, the lights, the massive industrial kitchens, the air conditioning for 4,000 people. It all requires the ship to keep running its engines or generators.
Yeah.
Usually, ships burn heavy fuel oil, which is cheap but highly polluting.
Okay.
Marine gas oil is a cleaner, highly refined alternative, but it is significantly more expensive. So Portland is offering this tariff discount to incentivize lines to burn the expensive, cleaner fuel while sitting in Casco Bay.
It's basically like a toll road that suddenly implements surge pricing to fix its potholes, but then offers you an easy pass discount if you happen to be driving a hybrid vehicle.
That is a perfect analogy.
And they aren't stopping at fuel types either. The city's Sustainability and Transportation Committee is reviewing options for their 2026 agenda targeting exhaust gas cleaning systems.
Scrubbers.
Scrubbers, right.
This is a massive flashpoint in the industry right now.
I always hear the term scrubber, and I just imagine like a giant sponge in the smokestack. How does this technology actually work, and why does Portland want to eliminate the discharge from it?
So a scrubber is essentially a shower system inside the ship's exhaust funnel. Instead of burning expensive, low-sulfur fuel, the ship burns the cheaper, dirty, heavy fuel oil.
Okay.
As the toxic exhaust travels up the funnel, the scrubber sprays massive amounts of seawater into the exhaust stream. The water essentially scrubs the sulfur out of the smoke, which allows the ship to meet air quality standards.
But the sulfur doesn't just disappear.
No, it goes into the water. In an open-loop scrubber system, that acidic, sulfur-heavy wash water is then discharged directly back into the ocean.
Oh.
Yeah, so local advocacy groups in Portland are pushing to eliminate that wash water discharge into Casco Bay, arguing it harms the local marine ecosystem.
Which really puts the city in a tough spot. They have to balance funding their working waterfront facilities with managing the environmental impact of these massive floating cities.
Right.
And Portland isn't an outlier here. Juneau, Alaska has increased passenger fees for environmental mitigation. Hawaii lawmakers are proposing a green fee for climate resilience. And Bar Harbor voters famously approved a 1,000 passenger daily limit.
We are witnessing a systemic repricing of the cruise product. The destinations hold the leverage right now, and they are demanding a higher premium for access.
So if destinations are becoming vastly more expensive to visit and cruise lines are being squeezed on margins, how do they make up the difference? I mean, they can't just rely on the shiny billion-dollar megaships that launch every year to carry the entire financial load of the company.
No, they have to extract maximum value from the ships they already own. That means investing heavily in legacy tonnage to keep those older vessels competitive enough to command premium ticket prices.
Let's look at P&O Cruises Ventura as the perfect case study for this.
Yes.
This is a Grand Class ship built in 2008. She carries about 3,100 guests, and she just returned to service on February 27th following a major dry dock at the Damen shipyard in Rotterdam.
And a ship built in 2008 is practically a different era in cruise design.
Oh, totally.
If P&O wants to deploy Ventura on lucrative long-haul itineraries, they cannot send her out looking like a mid-2000s time capsule.
And they certainly aren't easing her back into service with, like, short, cheap weekend getaways. Look at the itinerary they put her on right out of the shipyard. It's a 35-night repositioning-style cruise from Southampton to the Caribbean and the U.S.
35 nights.
Yeah. And the stops are impressive. La Coruña, Praia da Vitória, Port Canaveral, Miami, Cozumel, Belize, Roatán, Freeport.
And a standout extended 2-day stay in New Orleans.
Right. And then following this, it heads back to Northern Europe and the Canaries, hitting places like Zeebrugge, Santander, Vigo, Funchal, and Tenerife.
But to convince a modern consumer to spend over a month on a single ship, the onboard environment has to meet 2026 expectations.
And they completely overhauled the interior to meet those expectations. In the cabins and suites, they stripped out the old look and brought in warmer, neutral tones, new carpets, updated soft furnishings. They even added decorative ceiling lighting and sweet bedside maps.
And in the public spaces, the main atrium got a new dance floor with these marquetry effect timber finishes. They modernized the color schemes across the Red Bar, Tamarind Club, Havana, and Metropolis.
It's a huge refresh. But it's the dining and wellness upgrades that reveal the true strategy here, don't they?
Exactly. This isn't just about making the ship look pretty. It is about driving onboard revenue.
Explain that connection for me. How does, say, a carpet update actually drive revenue?
It's all about consumer psychology. Sindhu, their Indian specialty restaurant, received beautiful new block printing style carpets. They updated Epicurean, Beach House, Bay Tree, Saffron, and Waterside.
Right.
They even redesigned the 800-seat Arena Theater using Greek geometric symmetry. When a space feels premium, modern, and intentionally designed, passengers are statistically more likely to spend money on specialty dining cover charges, premium cocktails, and retail.
That makes total sense, especially when you look at what they did in the Oasis Spa. They introduced 3 Japanese head rituals for scalp care and relaxation.
Right, alongside a visual refresh that combines geometric tiles with warm tones.
They are totally tapping into the massive consumer demand for high-end wellness experiences. If you're stressed out about the $24 port tax in Portland, you can just forget about it while getting a Japanese scalp treatment.
Exactly. And they also added new retail spaces on decks 6 and 7. Every single square foot of a legacy ship has to be optimized to generate the revenue needed to offset the rising costs we discussed earlier.
But there is a massive caveat for anyone listening who thinks, great, I'll just book the first sailing after a ship gets upgraded.
Yes, there is.
We need to talk about the reality of the shipyard. Ventura's dry dock ran long, and because of that delay, P&O had to abruptly cancel a 4-night cruise departing February 23rd that was supposed to feature an overnight stay in Amsterdam.
The logistics of a dry dock are just mind-boggling. You are taking a 3,100-guest floating hotel, lifting it entirely out of the water, and coordinating thousands of contractors, electricians, and designers simultaneously.
It's a logistical tightrope.
It really is.
It's basically the ultimate home renovation, but on a maritime scale. You keep the strong foundational bones of the 2008 build, but you tear out the outdated fixtures to create this 2026 open-concept, wellness-focused interior.
Right.
But anyone who has ever survived a home renovation knows the contractor never finishes on the exact day they promise. You open up a wall and find a rusted pipe.
Oh, exactly. In a shipyard, they pull up a deck and find structural issues that require an extra 3 days of welding.
And supply chain issues are rampant, too.
Right. If the custom marquetry timber for that dance floor gets delayed at a border crossing, the entire project stalls. Delays are just a structural reality of this kind of heavy maintenance.
So for the listener mapping out their next vacation calendar, how should they approach a post-dry dock sailing? Is the reward of stepping onto a freshly polished ship with a brand new spa worth the risk of, losing your Amsterdam trip at the last minute?
Well, you have to book it with a flexible mindset.
Right.
If you book the very first revenue sailing out of a shipyard, you are actively absorbing some of the cruise line's schedule risk.
Right.
If they run long, your vacation is the collateral damage.
You essentially become the beta tester for the new plumbing.
In many ways, yes. But the payoff is that you get to experience a unique hybrid. Older ships like Ventura often have fantastic classic layouts, wider promenades, more spacious public flow that some of the modern megaships actually lack because they are so crammed with attractions.
That's a great point.
When you take those classic bones and inject modern amenities, you get a highly superior product.
You get the fresh carpet smell and the modern Japanese head ritual, but you just have to accept that your departure date might require a little grace.
Exactly. And when you look at all these moving pieces today, a fascinating picture emerges.
It really does.
Costa is pulling ships out of the Middle East because the geopolitical map is too complex. Portland and other ports are fundamentally increasing the cost of dropping anchor. And P&O is pouring millions into a 2008 ship to keep it highly profitable on a 35-night route.
It feels like the actual ocean and the ports of call are becoming the hostile elements of the vacation, while the ship itself is the heavily fortified, heavily polished safe haven.
Which brings up a question for the listener to consider as they browse these shifting 2026 and 2027 itineraries.
Yeah.
As destinations become significantly more expensive due to tariffs and entire regions become impossible to navigate due to risk, will we reach a point where the massive, newly upgraded ship is a primary destination? Are we approaching an era where the actual ports on the itinerary are entirely secondary to the hardware you were sailing on?
Something to think about the next time you are deciding between a ship with a new Japanese spa and an itinerary with expensive port fees. Thanks for listening to Cruise News. Visit cruisenews.io to catch up on the latest updates and sign up for free email alerts.